welcome to Live at 12:45. I'm Kristen Bomas, and thank you all for joining me. Today the question is, how does greed affect your life? And so I wanted to talk about a couple aspects of greed. One is, when we see greed in others, but do we find the little bits and remnants of greed within ourselves, and what do we do with that? So let's talk a little bit about greed in others. And we're coming up on a time in the year where it's all about gift giving and enjoying life from a place of love and giving. I don't know how else to put that, right? But sometimes we go to give a gift and the person is kind of taking it as if they, it's them. And that is a form of greed, right? It's something that they just don't quite understand how to receive, so they take. And so people have a funny feeling when that happens, and they don't know how to quite define it. And so let's think about those times and really help that other person start to relax into receiving, and maybe we can help others learn how to receive. Greed, for the most part, is a way where it's people who don't know how to receive are greedy. They take, they keep for themselves because they're so afraid of losing stuff, right? So that's the core of the greed, is the fear of not having. And so it's the fear of not receiving, and so they take, greed, right? It's all about me. And so when you think about that, if we can move beyond that superficial definition or judgment of greed, then we move back and start to understand what's driving the greed, and a lot of times that's what opens our compassion to that other individual. So if we feel somebody's being a little bit greedy, we're on the other side of Black Friday, but Black Friday is a great example of greed. People get up to the sales, and you see pictures of them, hoarding and grabbing it all because it's all about them, and they've got to have everything, blah, 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 blah. And meantime, there are people behind them hoping to get the same product, and we can't share. We take it all for ourselves, and that greediness comes from a fear within. So we know greed is a fear-based experience. It's obviously not a love-based experience. So what is the fear behind it? And more often than not, it's the fear of not having, not receiving, something along those lines. So I want us to look at greed and to really start to ask yourself, how does it affect you? What does it make you feel when somebody is greedy? Do you find yourself getting angry? If you do, there's an emotion behind that anger. It could be that you feel violated or taken advantage of, or like you just had a loss because of somebody else's greed, and that loss is bringing up something inside. Maybe it took away something you were really dreaming to have, or maybe something that you thought you would share with somebody. Maybe you allowed yourself to get very excited about receiving something that then was taken away from you because of somebody else's intention. So all of that is a form of greed. And so ask yourself how it affects your life, and what is it doing in your life at that time. Oftentimes, if we cross the paths of something that resurrects a fear-based emotion within us, we want to ask ourselves where that comes from and why it's in our life. And so if a greedy experience occurs in our life, let's ask, why is that there? What is it for us to gain? How do we take something away from that? So greed is a funny thing. It's a very selfish act. It's definitely a fear. It's a fear of not having. But there's a little bit of greed maybe in everybody, right? And we work through it in our lives, or we have the opportunity to work through it. That's our free will. But what is that little bit of greed? We all know what it's like. It's like, we take something really quick before somebody else gets it. It's that competitive edge, right? So it's there. It's not always necessarily that we're feeling selfish or greedy on the inside when we do it, but there's that little bit of, I gotta have it for me. And so what is that? What is that little bit inside each of us? And so if we can start to identify that within ourselves, we start to know where we have our own fear of not receiving or not having, something we wish for. And we may come across a little bit greedy at those times, or we may not. It might be minor enough that it's not felt as greed, but it's felt as a tension of some sort. So everybody has a little bit of that somewhere. Let's open our hearts during this holiday season and ask ourselves, how does greed affect us? How has it made us not as trusting on our giving? How has it made us not as comfortable in our receiving? Where does it create doubt inside us that we're going to get what we wish for? How does greed work its ugly little fingers into our life in so many ways? And when it shows up in uniform right in front of you, bold and ugly and greedy and another human being, understand it's there to teach us that there's something for us to gain inside ourselves by that person crossing our path, because they didn't have to. Everything in this life happens with purpose. And remember, if greed is a fear-based emotion, where it's presenting, there is an absence of love. So if we infuse it with love and compassion and understanding, we help dissipate the greed and open the individual to receiving. So in this holiday season, a time of beautiful gift giving and love giving, let's open our hearts compassionately to those who may display greed or who may seemingly be greedy. And let's find those little tiny bits and remnants of greed within ourselves, and let's see what we can do to dismantle it, to disseminate it, to let it go, and with compassion and love, illuminate the ability for everybody to receive and everybody to have their dreams come true. Thank you very much for joining me today. Please stay connected with me on Facebook and answer on my Facebook page the questions that we post so that we can share an answer that fulfills your answers and questions in life. So we're going to be looking at what your greatest gift is on next Monday. And this Thursday, we're going to be interviewing, hi Marcy, we're going to be interviewing Bill Longstreth for our every 6-week health show. And we're going to be talking this Thursday about legalized marijuana, and in particular, medicinal marijuana. So if you have any thoughts or any ideas about medicinal marijuana, CBD oil, anything like that, stories where it's helped, stories where it hasn't, please feel free to post on my Facebook page so I can include all of those thoughts and questions on Facebook Live on Thursday. And please join me also on YouTube, Kristen Bomis, where we have our Christianisms as well as my podcast. And of course on Instagram, where absolutely we have our morning mantra to hopefully lighten and enlighten each and every day of your life. So thank you all for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday with Bill. Please send your questions. Thank you, Marcy. You're a great gift as well. Bye.